She stands in the hallway between two worlds, the muffled arguing behind her parents' bedroom door and her little brother's whimpering from his room down the hall. At 7 years old, Maya has learned to read the weight of footsteps, the particular timbre of voices that means trouble, the way silence can feel more dangerous than shouting. She presses her small palm against the cool wall, feeling the vibrations of adult anger through the drywall. Her heart hammers against her ribs, but her face remains carefully composed. She has already decided she will go to her brother first, whisper stories until he falls asleep, then slip downstairs to make tomorrow's lunches so Mum doesn't have to worry about one more thing. Her childhood dissolves in these moments, atom by atom, replaced by a hypervigilant awareness that safety depends on her ability to manage everyone else's emotions. This is how a child learns to become an emotional thermostat. This is what happens when survival requires reading every micro-expression, every shift in atmospheric pressure between the adults who are supposed to protect you. The child doesn't disappear all at once, they fade gradually, their authentic self trading places with a smaller, more manageable version designed to maintain the peace. But what happens to that disappeared child? And what does it cost the adult they become when love was always something earned, never freely given? We praise children who are mature for their age. We celebrate the quiet ones who never cause trouble. We admire kids who can handle adult problems. But what if I told you that these gifted children often grow up to be the most emotionally exhausted adults? What if their strength was actually their trauma? Let me show you exactly what I mean. This is how a child disappears, not physically, but psychologically. They smile more, they cry less. They learn to read the room before they speak. They become the emotional thermostat of the household. They become small adults long before their minds are ready, and the world praises them for it. You're so mature, you're so responsible, you're so strong. But no one ever stops to ask, at what cost? The cost is profound and it has a name. This is the invisible grief of those who grew up too fast. And today we're going deep inside the psychology of that child because the effects don't vanish with age. They shape you. They follow you into relationships, careers, your sense of worth. And if you don't understand what happened, you'll spend your adult life repeating the survival patterns that once saved you but are now slowly killing you. Let's start with what's really happening developmentally. When children are forced to emotionally support adults instead of the other way around, psychologists call this parentification. Picture this, you're 8 years old, standing in the hallway listening to your parents fight. Your little brother is crying in his room, your mother is sobbing at the kitchen table, and somehow, you know it's your job to fix this. You walk over to your mother, you rub her back, you tell her everything will be okay. You become the parent to your own parent. This is parentification, and it's happening in millions of homes right now. When a child becomes the caregiver, the peacekeeper, the family therapist, or the emotional protector, their developing brain makes a profound adaptation. Neural pathways that should be forming around play, exploration, and trust get rewired for hypervigilance instead. The child's nervous system learns that safety depends on constant monitoring of adult emotions. You become a walking emotional thermostat. Your job is to read the room before you enter it, to know if mum had a bad day by the way she closes the car door, to tell the difference between dad's tired sigh and his angry sigh. Your survival depends on becoming an expert in other people's inner worlds while completely abandoning your own. This is your brain on survival. Every interaction becomes a calculation. Every relationship becomes a transaction. Love isn't something you receive, it's something you earn through perfect behavior, emotional labor, and making yourself indispensable. You learn to walk on eggshells so quietly that you forget you're entitled to make noise. You become so good at shrinking yourself to fit around other people's feelings that you lose track of your own shape entirely. Your needs become invisible even to you. The cruel irony, the world celebrates this adaptation. You're so mature for your age. You're such a good helper. I don't know what I'd do without you. These compliments land like rewards, reinforcing the neural pathways that keep you trapped in caretaking mode. But here's what no one tells you. This isn't emotional intelligence. This is hypervigilance masquerading as maturity. This is a nervous system that learned to survive by becoming indispensable to people who should have been taking care of you. Your brain, in its infinite wisdom, chose connection over authenticity. Because for a child, abandonment equals death, so you abandoned yourself instead. Here's your first insight. If you're constantly scanning rooms for tension, if you immediately notice when someone's mood shifts, if you feel responsible for other people's emotions, this isn't your personality. This is hypervigilance from childhood, and recognizing it is the first step to freedom. These neural pathways run deep. They were carved during your most formative years, when your brain was most plastic, most adaptable. They became your default operating system, and unless you consciously choose to rewire them, they'll keep running the show decades later, and in your place grows a version of you that performs well. You become the good child, the quiet achiever, the one who never asks for anything. But what happens when these perfect children become adults? Here's the tragic irony. These children become adults who are incredibly skilled at holding space for others, but have no idea how to hold space for themselves. Let me show you exactly how this shows up. You become hyper-independent, not by choice, but by necessity. Asking for help feels like admitting failure. Receiving care feels foreign, uncomfortable, like wearing clothes that don't fit. When someone offers support, your first instinct is to deflect. I'm fine, really. Even when you're drowning, you push people away the moment they get too close. Not because you don't want connection, but because vulnerability feels like handing someone a loaded weapon. You've learned that people leave, that they disappoint, that the only person you can truly count on is yourself. So you create distance before they can. You refuse help with an almost religious devotion. When friends offer to bring dinner during a crisis, you decline. When your partner suggests splitting household tasks, you insist you can handle it. When colleagues volunteer to lighten your workload, you wave them off. You've become so skilled at carrying everyone else's load that you've forgotten it's okay to set yours down. Watch yourself during happy moments. Do you feel guilty for enjoying yourself? Do you constantly scan for what could go wrong? Do you struggle to stay present when things are actually going well? This is your nervous system, still convinced that peace is temporary and you need to stay ready for the next crisis. You've become addicted to productivity because stillness feels like laziness. Rest feels selfish. Doing nothing feels wrong. Your worth has become so tangled up with your usefulness that you've forgotten you have value just for existing. You schedule relaxation like a task to complete rather than a gift to receive. Your baseline is chaos. Your nervous system has accepted dysfunction as normal. Calm feels suspicious. Healthy relationships feel boring. You find yourself drawn to complicated people, dramatic situations, anything that activates your familiar patterns of fixing and rescuing. Peace makes you anxious because it's foreign territory. In relationships, you become the therapist friend, the one everyone calls during a crisis, the shoulder everyone cries on. You give and give and give until you're empty, then wonder why you feel resentful and exhausted. You've become so skilled at reading other people's needs that you've gone blind to your own. You over-functioning in relationships, taking responsibility for outcomes that aren't yours to control. You manage other people's emotions, anticipate their needs, solve their problems before they even ask. You mistake this for love, but it's actually control disguised as care. You struggle to receive genuine affection. Compliments bounce off you. Gifts make you uncomfortable. When someone does something nice for you, your immediate response is, "What do I owe them?" Love feels like debt. Care feels like obligation. You've forgotten that sometimes people give simply because they want to. You're the master of emotional labor, but a stranger to emotional receiving. You can hold space for everyone else's feelings, but have no idea what to do with your own. You've become so good at being strong that you've forgotten how to be soft. Here's a powerful question to ask yourself right now. When was the last time I truly rested without feeling guilty? If you can't remember, or if rest feels selfish, you're still operating from that childhood survival mode. Write down 3 ways you could rest this week without earning it first. This isn't weakness. This isn't failure. This is what happens when a child's survival depends on becoming indispensable. These patterns saved your life once. They're just no longer serving you. This is the psychology of a child forced to grow up too fast. But here's what puzzles most people about this pattern. Now you may ask, why would any child willingly take on that role? Because children will do anything for attachment, even abandon themselves. This isn't a conscious choice. This is biology. This is your nervous system making a split-second calculation. If I become what they need, maybe they'll keep me. For a child, abandonment equals death, not metaphorically, literally. You cannot survive alone. So when faced with the choice between authenticity and attachment, your brain chooses connection every single time. This is the most intelligent thing you could have done. Not the most healthy, not the most fair, but the most intelligent. Your child mind understood something profound. If I show my real feelings, my real needs, my real self, they might leave. But if I become their helper, their supporter, their little therapist, I become indispensable. You traded your authentic self for guaranteed connection, and it worked. You survived. But here's the cruel mathematics of childhood trauma. What saved you then imprisons you now. Those same strategies that kept you safe in chaos now keep you trapped in patterns that no longer serve you. You're still that child, desperately trying to earn love by being useful, by being needed, by being anything except yourself. The biological drive for attachment is so powerful that children will literally reshape their personalities to maintain connection. You become whoever your parents need you to be. The mature one, the caregiver, the peacekeeper, the invisible one. Your nervous system learns that your real self is dangerous, that your authentic feelings are threats to survival. You developed what psychologists call a false self, a version of you designed to be lovable, acceptable, safe. This false self becomes so convincing that you forget it's a costume. You start believing this is who you really are, the strong one, the reliable one, the one who doesn't need anything. But underneath that false self, your authentic child is still waiting, still hoping, still carrying that fantasy that someone will finally see through the performance and love the real you. You keep looking for the parent you never had in every relationship, every friendship, every romantic connection. You're still that child waiting to be rescued, protected, chosen. The deepest wound isn't what happened to you, it's what didn't happen. The protection that never came, the comfort that was never offered, the unconditional love that was always conditional. You learned to parent yourself because no one else would, but the child in you never stopped needing a real parent. This is why you can't just get over it. This isn't about willpower or positive thinking. This is about rewiring decades of neurological programming that was designed to keep you alive. Your attachment system is still running on outdated software, still believing that love must be earned, that connection requires performance, that being yourself is too dangerous to risk. Here's what I want you to do right now. Place your hand on your heart and say these words. I was just a child doing my best to survive. What I did was intelligent, not weak. Feel that. Because until you stop judging that child, you'll keep punishing the adult. The child in you made the best decision available with the information they had. They chose connection over authenticity because disconnection felt like death. Honor that choice, honor that intelligence, honor that survival. So many of us are walking around as high-functioning adults with deeply neglected inner children pulling the strings. The first step to healing isn't fixing, it's witnessing. Your mind will try to convince you it wasn't that bad, that other people had it worse, that you're being dramatic, oversensitive, making mountains out of molehills. This is self-gaslighting, and it's the first barrier to healing. Your adult mind, still trying to protect that child, minimizes the pain to make it bearable. But here's the truth. If it affected you, it was significant. If it changed how you see yourself, it mattered. If it's still impacting your relationships, your self-worth, your ability to trust, then it was significant enough to deserve your attention. You've become adults who never feel completely safe, even in calm rooms. You scan for exits. You keep one foot out the door. You're lovers who can't fully trust softness because you've learned that peace can shatter without warning. You're high achievers who feel like imposters because you've never learned that you're worthy of success just for being yourself. You live with a constant undercurrent of anxiety, not because something bad is happening, but because you're waiting for something bad to happen. Your nervous system is stuck in a state of hypervigilance, convinced that if you let your guard down, disaster will strike. Carl Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." Shadow work demands that we turn toward the parts of ourselves we've been running from. The scared child, the angry adolescent, the grieving parts that never got to mourn what they lost. This is the work of going back to hold that child's hand, not to rescue them, you can't change the past, but to witness them, to say, "I see you, I believe you. What happened to you mattered." This is how healing begins, with radical acknowledgement of what was. Shadow work isn't about digging up every painful memory. It's about turning toward the abandoned parts of yourself with curiosity instead of judgment. It's about asking, what did this experience teach me about myself, about others, about the world? And then asking, is that still true? Does that belief still serve me? You discover that the parts of yourself you've been ashamed of, your neediness, your anger, your sadness, aren't flaws to fix. They're messengers carrying important information. Your neediness is your attachment system asking for connection. Your anger is your boundaries demanding respect. Your sadness is your heart grieving what you lost. The goal isn't to eliminate these feelings, it's to learn their language, to understand what they're trying to tell you, to give them a voice instead of silencing them with productivity, perfectionism, or people-pleasing. You begin to see that healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world taught you that you weren't enough, before you learned to hide your authentic self behind masks of strength and capability. This work will bring up grief, massive, ocean-sized grief for the childhood you didn't get to have, for the protection that never came, for the unconditional love that was always conditional. This grief isn't a sign that you're broken, it's a sign that you're finally allowing yourself to feel what you couldn't feel then. Here's your healing tool. Tonight, before bed, ask your inner child, what did you need most that you never got? Listen without trying to fix or rationalize. Just witness. Write down what comes up. This is how you begin to parent yourself the way you needed to be parented. The answers might surprise you. Maybe they needed someone to notice when they were sad. Maybe they needed permission to be imperfect. Maybe they needed someone to protect them from adult problems. Maybe they just needed someone to see them, really see them beyond their usefulness. But that grief, it's not weakness. It's proof that you're healing, because what was once frozen is finally falling. Here's what changes everything: learning to give yourself what that child never got. I'll show you exactly how to start this process today. Start with validation. That child needed someone to say, your feelings matter, your experience is real, you're not making this up. Now you get to be that voice. When you catch yourself minimizing your pain, stop. Place your hand on your heart and say, what I went through was real and it affected me. That makes perfect sense. Give yourself the protection you never had. This means creating boundaries that keep you safe. It means saying no without explaining why. It means removing yourself from situations that activate your old survival patterns. You're no longer a child who has to endure toxic environments to maintain connection. You have choices now. Use them. Grant yourself permission to feel everything. That child was taught their emotions were inconvenient, too much, inappropriate. Now you get to feel angry without fixing it immediately. You get to feel sad without cheering yourself up. You get to feel scared without being brave. Your emotions aren't problems to solve, they're information to receive. Practice the art of receiving. Start small. Let someone hold the door for you without rushing to reciprocate. Accept a compliment without deflecting. Allow a friend to buy you coffee without calculating what you owe them. These micro moments of receiving rewire decades of hyper-independence. Stop seeking your parents and your partners. You'll know you're doing this when you find yourself trying to heal someone else's wounds, when you're drawn to emotionally unavailable people, when you mistake intensity for intimacy. Instead, seek partners who can meet you where you are, not where you're trying to get them to be. Learn to distinguish between anxiety and intuition. Anxiety feels urgent, chaotic, demanding immediate action. It's your old survival system scanning for threats. Intuition feels calm, certain, grounded. It's your authentic self offering guidance. When you feel panicked about someone's mood, that's anxiety. When you feel a quiet knowing about a decision, that's intuition. Practice coming home to yourself. This is the metaphor that changes everything. Imagine your inner child has been living in exile and you're finally calling them home. Home is your body when it's relaxed. Home is your breath when it's deep. Home is your nervous system when it's regulated. Home is the place where you don't have to perform to be loved. Choose softness over survival mode. This is perhaps the most radical act for someone who grew up too fast, allowing yourself to be soft. Soft in your responses, soft in your expectations, soft in your self-talk. Survival mode is rigid, hypervigilant, always ready for battle. Softness is flexible, trusting, open to connection. Create rituals of self-parenting. Maybe it's reading yourself a bedtime story. Maybe it's making your favorite childhood meal. Maybe it's talking to yourself the way you wished someone had talked to you then. These aren't childish acts, they're healing acts. You're literally reparenting yourself. Build a support system that sees you, not just what you do for them, but who you are beneath the helping. Find people who can hold space for your feelings without trying to fix them. People who value your presence, not just your productivity. People who remind you that you're lovable, even when you're not useful. Your action step, starting today. Choose one small way to nurture yourself daily. Maybe it's saying no without explaining why. Maybe it's buying yourself flowers. Maybe it's taking a bath without your phone. Small acts of self-parenting rewire decades of self-abandonment. Remember, healing isn't linear. Some days you'll feel strong and integrated. Other days you'll feel like that scared child again. Both are normal. Both are part of the journey. Be patient with your process. So if you're someone who grew up too fast, know this. Your maturity was never the problem. The problem was that you had no choice. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. But shadow work demands that we face it. All of it. The neglected, the ashamed, the scared, the angry. Because healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. You were born worthy. You were born whole. You were born deserving of love that didn't require performance, protection that didn't depend on your usefulness, care that wasn't conditional on your perfection. That child still lives inside you, waiting, hoping, ready to trust again if you'll just turn toward them with compassion instead of criticism. The patterns that saved you in childhood, the hypervigilance, the people-pleasing, the emotional labor, they weren't failures of character. They were masterpieces of survival. You adapted brilliantly to impossible circumstances. You found ways to stay connected when disconnection felt like death. Honor that intelligence. Honor that resilience. Honor that fierce will to survive. But now you do. You can choose softness. You can choose to rest. You can choose to receive love without earning it first. You can choose to show up authentically instead of perfectly. You can choose to let people love the real you, not just the helpful you. Let that child come home. Let them cry. Let them play. Let them finally be seen. Let them discover that they're lovable not because of what they do, but because of who they are. Let them learn that safety doesn't require constant vigilance, that love doesn't require constant performance, that belonging doesn't require constant sacrifice. You're not broken, you're becoming whole. You're not damaged goods, you're a human being who survived impossible odds and is now learning to thrive. You never had a childhood, but you still have a future, and this time you get to write it. This time you get to choose protection over performance, authenticity over approval, connection over compliance. And maybe for the first time you're finally growing up the right way. Not through pressure, not through fear, but through truth.